Welcome to the Big Fat Real Estate Checks podcast with Marco Kozlowski, where we help investors like you get the knowledge and skills you need to replace your JOB with passive cash flow for life.
Hey everyone, welcome to Big Fat Real Estate Checks. This is Marco Kozlowski. I'm joined today with Gabriel Araish and Franca Galuccio, where we're going to be discussing ways of finding opportunities, taking down opportunities, and monetizing opportunities to make passive income. And in order to make Big Fat Real Estate Checks, which is the name of this podcast, you're going to need some skills, both physical skills and also inner game skills, how to control really your inner game, how to not be frustrated or let things sway you, because without a clear path, without a mission, a vision, a purpose, without clarity, it's going to be very difficult for you to be very, very successful. So we're going to discuss something that I think all of us have, and it's called ego, and it is going to be most likely the number one thing that's going to stop you in your life. Your number one enemy. Of course, it's designed to protect you in the wild when you're being chased by tigers. Your ego was kind of important, but it's still important now. But there's a way to harness it to make it more successful. So we're going to get into those conversations, and of course, if you have not yet joined our followers. As a official follower, if I should say, a subscriber, please subscribe, share this, love it, comment. We always love hearing from you, and we want to continue to be the number one content creator for what we do, and we're very pleased to have you listen to us as well, and we would love to be shared so others can learn how to generate wealth using none of your own money, but using skill sets. So today we're going to be discussing ego. Who would like to begin?
I can begin.
Of course, it's going to be you, Frank.
Well, you know what? I had a big ego.
This was
one of my. It's got to be me, the big ego. Actually, you know what? This was my weakness. I think I got it from my parents, so I'll blame my parents for this if they're listening. But
our next
think
podcast is how to take responsibility for your own actions.
Exactly. I'll blame somebody else. It's not me. Someone gave it to me.
Victim.
Well, listen, I learned from my parents, right? That was my influence back then. And ego was my big weakness. It's like, I can do it myself. I can do it better. Step aside, you're pushing people aside and say, I can do it. And I honestly, I was brought up that way. I'm not lying. This is not bullshit. It was. I think it was more because my parents are Italian, and that's their mentality. That's their culture to let me just do it myself type of thing. And like you said, Marco, in the beginning of this podcast, that's going to really hurt you. I had to let go, and it wasn't something easy to do. I still struggle with it, where I do certain tasks where I was like, oh, let me do it myself. Let me look it up. And it's like, fuck, and my wife keeps saying it, stick to what you know, man. Stick to what you know, and don't put your ego in there. You can't know everything. I think, Marco, you mentioned before, we know, what's that? What you know today is a fraction or even a speck of what's out there in terms of knowledge. So there's no way you're going to know everything or pretend to know everything. But people do act in that way, and I did as well. And I know I take 3 or 4 steps backwards when I do so. And in this particular industry, looking for real estate, initially, I don't think my ego was in the way. Initially, I was open to being coached, Marco. I think that's one of your qualifications. If your ego's in the way, you don't want them. Because it's going to be very difficult to teach someone where they say, no, let me do it my way. No, I know how to do it this way. So I actually liked it coming in as a virgin into this industry, not knowing too much of it. That actually helped me to put my ego aside, to check in my ego.
So how did you go from I want to do everything myself to actually wanting to get help? Because you were at one of my very first classes that I did in a long time, back, this is a long time ago. So you were like a very early adapter. I think you were in one of the very first classes, and you made a decision. You were, I think, the first one that applied, saying, I absolutely want to do this. And so that's very unusual. And, you had a government job, and it was money that you really didn't have that you had to find. And it was a big jump. It was a large sum of money. And even for back then, it's still a large sum of money. So
it was.
So tell me, sorry, I know we're stuttering with each other here, but I'm trying to figure out, because had your ego really been involved, you would have been like, he explained it, I get it, now I'm going to do it.
Right.
But that was never there for you, at least when we met.
Let me give you exactly. So let me give you a little bit of background. Before I met you, Marco, I knew I wanted to get into. I knew I wanted to turn the leaf over. I knew I wanted something, a different chapter in my life. So I started exploring, me and my wife, on buying properties in the U.S. And you weren't my first mentor, Marco. No offense, but I dabbed in a few of them just to see and just to learn. And a lot of these things that I subscribed to and paid for. There were like the lessons, and you watch and you do. So I was kind of doing it on my own, but that's where I got frustrated. Where I was like, this shit's not working. I need help with it. And I realized, I was doing it for a year and a half, 2 years, and thank God I didn't pull the trigger on my own, because if I did, I would have done it wrong. And then when I met you, that's when I not wasted 2 years. I went through 2 years without any results. I dabbed a little bit with different mentors or whatever, and tried to do it on my own, like your, do it yourself type of training or whatever. And it didn't get me the results that I was looking for. So when I met you, and I came to your preview, and I was like, damn, this guy's the real McCoy. He's actually doing this shit. It's not a face. Most of the ones that I went to, they have a celebrity. They have the face. The celebrity's not there. They have a face. They leverage the celebrity to draw people in there, and then they teach us a guy that's teaching it. And he may not even have properties, or she. But when I saw you, Marco, that you're actually doing what you're preaching, and you were kind of ballsy by doing, live seller calls, I knew you were the one. Then I checked in my ego at that point, says, I know I can't do this on my own. I want this guy. And that's why I went for the highest. I want this guy. I want to know his email. I want his phone number. I want him to teach me.
Then you put a ring on him.
And I put a ring on him. Well, it was 2 years later. I already knew I wanted to. Yes, I already knew I wanted to leave the government, and I felt like I wasted 2 years. So now I was, not in a race against time, but in essence, yes. So I checked my ego when I met you. That's why I jumped on it, and that's why I had no hesitation to go for the top.
Yeah.
I want the top. I want to get there quick.
I'm trying to really differentiate. So you had your ego involved for a period of time. It wasn't working for you. And you had to have a conversation with yourself, which is pretty elevated, because what most people do when they have their egos involved is it's not me that's the problem. It's got to be the thing that's the problem. Real estate doesn't work, or buying properties in the U.S. doesn't work, or because I'm perfect. There's no way that I could do anything wrong. So it's got to be the thing that I'm working on that doesn't work. And then you just check out and go into the next shiny object. So you try this class, and then you try another class, and you're zipping all over the place trying to figure out, the thing that's actually going to work, when the defective thing that's actually not working is the person looking at you in the mirror. It's not necessarily what you're doing that doesn't work. It's how you're doing it that doesn't necessarily get effective. And that's a big mature step that people that are really ego driven don't ever get to. And that's just a reality.
It was a wide opener, and yes, I knew that real estate did work, because when I did go to business conferences or whatever, I talked to many people, and a lot of them had their roots were real estate. So I knew it did work. I just had different pieces from all these different courses that I took, and I realized I can't do this shit. That's when I had that talk with myself. I said, I can't do this on my own, and if I do, I may be hurting myself and my family, because you're one deal of being out of business, and I didn't want to be a statistic in terms of business failure or whatever. So I didn't want to do it on my own. No. So I wanted someone that did it.
And that's what I did, Frank.
Yeah, well, there you go. But you learn, and it hurts and it stings.
Yeah,
right. It stings.
It still does.
Yeah.
So Gabe, so ego's a big thing.
Yeah.
So
wow.
just. I know Frank's been doing all the talking, which is highly unusual. Very weird.
Mark that down on your calendars, folks.
I'm not checking that ego side. I like to talk. I like to talk.
I would like to listen too. You have a lot of good things to say, Frank. So that's nothing wrong there. It's not what you do know. That I think I saw the expression. Mark Twain said something like, "It's not what you know that's going to hurt you, it's what you know for certain is true that isn't, or that ain't, that will." right? So it's being completely certain that something is accurate, but it's not. And as you know, the more you do know, the more you realize you don't know anything. So it's nice to be a perpetual student and to check your ego at the door. But we all have egos, and it beat the shit out of me for many years, and stopped me for a very long time as well. But this isn't about me right now. Gabriel, share.
Yeah, well, I've shared,
tell me your
I've shared
ego battle story.
I've shared my story in a past podcast, but essentially my ego is what led me eventually to understand, or led me into a really shitty path where, all the things that Frank was worried about doing if he had done it himself, I actually did, and I paid a hefty price for it, not just financially, but from a stress standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, even from a family standpoint for a little while. So it led me to have no choice. Really, that's what my ego did to me. And then I did look in the mirror one day, and I did blame the guy that was looking back at me, and that's when everything changed. So for me as well, once I met Marco, when I met you, it was a no-brainer for me. This is what I needed. I just needed to see it, and I saw it, and then I had to have a coach. I had to have someone teach me, because for those who don't know, my background is one of a CPA, so math is supposed to be my forte. And I did get into real estate deals, I thought that just understanding math and understanding how money, or what I thought money worked, or how I thought money worked, was going to get me by. And in real estate sometimes, or I think most of the time here, I used to deal with, I want to say this, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but with individuals who were not as educated as where I went, or hadn't attended university, or hadn't even finished high school sometimes. So for me at that time, with the mindset I had, was that, well, I'm smarter than these people, that's for sure, and this is how I ended up in the mess that I ended up, and not understanding that maybe I had more knowledge in accounting, but that didn't mean I had more knowledge in another industry or specific path, such as real estate. So ultimately that's I had to have that shift. I did, thankfully, because it took a long time. I still think that I should have realized this way before, and unfortunately, I had to, go down a path that's really dark for me to realize this. And but I did, and then once I decided to check that ego out, and I think ego and taking responsibility is kind of goes hand in hand there. I know we mentioned that at the beginning, but for me, it was like a magical moment. It's a turning point in my life, definitely, where learning to say, okay, I'm the problem here, so let me fix that first, and then things could go well. And ever since, whether you call it that's the turning point or not, that's my life's been a lot better. So I've been able to do better with real estate, make less mistakes, because we're still going to make mistakes. They're just going to be a lot smaller, a lot less costly. We'll learn faster from them, and we'll be able to pivot quicker. And it's also helped me in other facets of my businesses. I have multiple businesses, and now I also delegate a lot. Is another thing that, I know, Frank, you alluded to this, where, you like to do a lot of things yourself, which I still see you struggle with too sometimes, and it's understandable. It's something that you got to let go of, that you're not used to. I was like that as well. Control is something that's extremely important, especially when you've been screwed before, because as much as you take responsibility, when someone else does something intentionally to hurt you, there is responsibility somewhere else as well. And it's hard. You want to keep control because you feel that's the only way you can't get screwed or you won't mess up. But learning to find the right people so you can delegate that trust to was something that I had to do. And that also involves ego. So I think a lot of my other businesses have been doing well because I've been able to just delegate 100% of it sometimes, or 98% of it, and just do the 2% that I'm really good at, and then that works well.
Some self-mastery in there for sure, where you realize what you're good at, and you're okay with it, and you're okay with what you're not good at, and replace yourself in those moments of time.
Yeah, no, I didn't check in my complete ego. So I do have those, and and you're like, you tell me sometimes, Gabe, you say, Frank, why are you doing that? It's like, I don't know, man. Some things actually I enjoy doing myself. So it's just a different pace in my life to do something different. And some of them, I just don't let it go for some reason. And I listen, I'm not perfect, but I did learn over even this last half a decade, that listen, any successful person you look at, they're all humble. They're all humble. They always they don't pretend to know it all. And most of my family's like that. It's just, I think it's in the Italian blood. It's like, yeah, step aside. I know how to do this, whatever. And it's that mentality that actually gets you hurt. Or even if you don't get hurt, it doesn't allow you to move forward. So very successful people are very humble. It's like, oh, tell me how you do it. Maybe I'm going to learn from you to do it better or more efficient or whatever. I have a big flaw where someone tells me something, I always immediately try to improve it. I'm trying to look for the plus. And sometimes my wife says, stop fucking doing it. Just follow it, man. It's already proven. Do it. It doesn't need improvement. You don't have to change it right now. So I still have, ego in the closet.
Well, we all do, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's
you're not going to get rid of 100%. It. It's just how to
tame
reduce
it. Tame it is what you want.
Yeah, tame it and control it to a certain point. So, but although if you've controlled your ego, then you definitely have more ego than you need, because knowing that you have an ego and letting it, this is a deep conversation.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Because the more you feel, I've controlled my ego. Well, that's a guy. How big is this guy?
That's right.
Right. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
He needs a really big door.
Exactly. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And the more you let it go, then the less ego you have, which is very interesting. This is probably I'm sure there's a religion based around this.
It's somewhere,
where you just complete Zen, right?
Yeah.
Just nothing, exactly.
Yeah.
Where you're just in a perfectly non-ego place. But, obviously there's the importance of just knowing that it's there and it is sabotaging to your wealth, your health, and your future. And everyone around you in your relationships is pretty important. I saw a formula which I thought was very, very interesting, which is success equals, and then you have a specific knowledge or specialized knowledge, so something that's very specialized, multiplied by focused action, not just action by itself, not just focus, but it's focused action. So something, laser focused, divided by ego. So the smaller your ego is, the bigger the multiplier. Obviously, the more you're going to be successful. But if you have a lot of ego, it's going to be really difficult for you to do quite well. No matter how good your specialized knowledge is, and no matter good how your focused action is, those two multipliers together will be divided by the ego, yourself, that you put into it. And the more you think about that formula, the more accurate it becomes. And I know that the growth in our business, I say our business because in the real estate education space business, I say our because you're very involved in it, and I don't see it as mine anymore. I see it as ours, right? And you guys are very integral in that, and we have meetings constantly. We're meeting, multiple times a week, always discussing things, trying to get better. And it's not about us. It's about how to make the project better. So none of us have our own, this is Frank or this is Gabe. This is the project, and how can we just put as much of ourselves into it to improve it, but it's not about us. And it really helps our community at the same time, because they feel that they're part of something that's much bigger than them. So it really, the less ego that we all have, the more we're all growing, I believe. I love our dynamic, the students that we have and what we're doing and how we're doing things. It's just very positive.
It is.
I've never had a business that I've enjoyed to work in more than the one that we're in now.
It definitely is a lot of fun. And just to add to that formula, this is where it's interesting, because the formula is not one that applies to one individual on its own all the time, right? So we have different specialized knowledge, the three of us, and what we do is we increase that multiplier by working together and each brings their specialized knowledge there. And then the focus part, or the focused action, is also interesting because, focused action is extremely difficult to keep 100% of the time. And that's something where when you have multiple individuals that are working in the same direction, that focused action can someone be redirected by, if I get less focused because, shit's happening in my life or whatnot, then I know I can fall back on the two of you to kind of put me back in check or help me get back into that zone, and vice versa, I would hope. And then the ego, obviously, even if one of us has a higher ego than the other, then if you add all 3 egos and divide them by 3, the average would still be lower if someone has a lower ego. So, working with the right people can also help here.
That's a lot of math.
I know.
Ego
I had to bring it in. And just in case, just in case people didn't believe me, there it is.
Carry the 4.
So we're gonna put everything in brackets.
What are you saying, Gabe? I gotta add
cubed.
everyone's laser focus and.
I will lower your ego.
I don't think my calculator has these buttons.
It's okay. You have me. That's
I just use the one on my iPhone.
That's my specialized knowledge. We're good.
Yeah.
I am Job.
I'll let you do the calculation then.
That's fine.
See?
I'm okay with it.
And so you can calculate it. Frank can collect the tax, and
tell the world about it.
Yeah.
I'll just watch things happen, wondering what's going on. That's fine. So yeah. So let's just do one little extra here, just so we can give some little extra value. So if someone feels that they don't have an ego, I guess what would the markers you think be of someone that has too much ego into what they're doing?
That's like an alcoholic saying, "I don't have a problem. Can you pass me a bottle?"
Yeah, you can be blinded by it. That's true.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying is, I'm driving into my commute to the job that I hate, and I've been trying a lot of things, and I don't have an ego. That's impossible.
Wow.
What do you think a sort of a marker might be?
Well,
and again, if you can't answer it, I'll just edit this out of the podcast. But if you're hearing this, it means we probably found something cool to talk about, because this is a side curve that we didn't even discuss that we're going to talk about. What do you think?
I think if someone thinks that they know everything, or if every time someone else discusses a subject, you always have something to add to it or to contradict the other individual who may have more specialized knowledge than you, I think that's a big sign. And, I'm not going to lie, this is something that I did in the past where, I always try to contribute to every conversation thinking that I'm adding value, and I had to start using my 2 ears more than my one mouth. So I started listening more, and that was one way, but I had to realize it. And I think realizing that you have an ego or too much of an ego is probably the hardest part or the hardest step in this process. But these are signals. When you're always arguing about everything, when you think you know everything, everybody else is wrong and you're right, I think those are signals. I don't know if there's any others that you guys can think of, but those are definitely ones that I see. And you can tell as soon as you speak to someone else too, which is interesting. When you realize and fix your own ego issues, you can realize the people that you're having conversations with, where they are on that, I guess, on that totem pole of the ego, and if you want to work with them or not.
Have you fixed your ego issues, Gabriel? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I fixed them. At least some of them.
All right. There's no ego in that statement at all.
No.
Frank, go ahead.
Well, you nailed it, Gabriel. It's when you're trying to improve someone else's process or thought, and like I said before, that's what I used to do. Is always trying to improve it, and that's a sign of your ego's getting into the way. Mm-hmm. And basically, if you're not where you want to be, or you're blaming others, like fuck, the government. Don't blame the government. I used to blame the government.
Frank is the government.
I still blame the government for different issues, though, that I have no control over. But no, it's serious. It's when I have my colleagues that, they're blaming the government. Hey, you're free to go. You're free to leave the government. So if you're blaming the government because you didn't reach your goal or you're not where you're at, then that's your ego involved in there. And you're blaming everyone else other than yourself. So yeah, complaining and trying to improve shit that doesn't need improvement.
I agree. And I think truth, just not being married to being right, but just married to the truth, I think is going to be a different shift. Even in our processes where we've improved the process, because I can't take responsibility for it at all. What I was teaching 2 years ago and where we are now with processes and flow charts and, this is when this happens, that happens. All that was it went from what I wanted to teach to what needed to be taught, and truth. And if someone had an idea, it wasn't, well, this is not what I created, so forget it. It's a collective of people that are contributing to the greater good of the project. So it changes things and makes it a lot more interesting to really remove yourself completely out of where you want to be, is exactly as Frank and Gabe both said. what are the results that you're looking for your family, yourself, how much, all the things, and how are you going to get there? And is it about the things that you do or things that need to be done? So it's remove the word me or just the word I, and go from just this is what needs to be done. And these are the tools that are needed. These are the actions that need to be taken, and it really changes the landscape of how quickly you can accomplish something. Because as soon as I took myself out of my own business, really, and any of the other businesses that I've purchased, I've purchased a few bars lately, and I've really, with help of my team, I'm going to say I'm not the only one, but through processes and through us all letting our egos go and creating a really good process around how to make the patron's experience better, how to make the customer experience better, what processes can we put together to make everything better, not just for the patrons, but those that work in the environment as well. It's created a really interesting culture of just people wanting things to shine and explode, because it's not about me or you anymore, it's about us. And I think that really is a game changer. I think we could have a discussion, Gabe and Frank, on this for hours, but I don't want to make it too boring for the listener. So anyway, that's a little bit of insight into shit that's going on with us. I hope this was a little bit helpful. If you learned one little thing, great. If you learned nothing, then oh well, we gave it a shot. Appreciate you very much as a listener, Frank and Gabe as well. I appreciate you and your egos, and I'm looking forward to our next podcast, where we're going to discuss, I have no idea what yet, because we never really plan these things, but it's a lot of fun to do, and I hope you enjoy it just as much as we do. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the next episode of Big Fat Real Estate Checks. Take care.
If you like this episode of Big Fat Real Estate Checks, then show some love by leaving a comment and a good rating. Also, as a thank you for tuning in today, we've got a special free gift. The journey to passive cash flow for a life starts by finding deals, and it's easier than you think. Simply go to getdealsbytuesday.com, enter your email address, and we'll send you a free quick start course called Deals by Tuesday. Even if it's 11 p.m. Monday night, this course will show you how to find discounted real estate deals by Tuesday. It's that fast and simple. Go to getdealsbytuesday.com and start your journey toward life-changing cash flow today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.